Welcome to the Dare to Begin Small and Mighty podcast, episode number 36. Welcome to part one of this three-part series called Your First Year of Business. Our first part is inspired by an episode of The Dragon's Den that I watched recently and is all about relationships. The relationships you build are the cornerstone of your business. They can literally make or break your business. No pressure, right? Let's dive in. I spent years building my interior design business, trying to do all the things: the marketing, the networking, the free content, spending thousands of dollars on training and education, only to see minimal growth. After years of frustration, I finally started to ask, what am I missing? I had the systems in place for powerful growth. I had amazing clients. I had determination, drive, and commitment to spare. And yet, I wasn't seeing the success I desired. What if business is not about the doing? What if building a powerful business requires both powerful systems and something else, something deeper? I'm Amy Van Meel, and I'm on a journey to discover that something else. If you are ready to build a powerful business and do it knowing that your success is inevitable, join me as I share both the powerful systems I know work and my lessons and revelations as I discover that something deeper. Welcome, Changemaker, to the Dare to Begin Small and Mighty podcast. Well, hey there, Changemakers. Welcome to the Dare to Begin Small and Mighty podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am so happy to join you on the podcast, and I just love that you guys listen in. So thank you so much for joining me every week to tune in and see what I have to share for you. So I'm super excited about this podcast and the next two to follow. I am doing a small series, a three-part series called Your First Year of Business. And it's been a series that I've been thinking about for a little while. And so I'm excited that finally I'm at the point where I've, built my notes and I'm ready to talk about it. And I want to start off our three-part series with a talk about relationships and focusing on building your relationships. So I want to share with you how this first part actually became to be the first part of the series, because I'll be honest with you, it wasn't what I was originally thinking would be part one. So earlier this week, I was, trying to figure out what to have for lunch. And when I'm figuring out what to have for lunch, sometimes I'm staring at Netflix going, what the heck am I going to eat today? And I realized that on Netflix, The Dragon's Den has now just been added. And I've never really seen the show. I've seen snapshots of it and commercials of it in hotel rooms and stuff, but never really watched it. And I thought, what the heck? Why don't I see what's in The Dragon's Den? I'll watch an episode. We'll see what it is. Maybe it will inspire me in some way. Because the funny thing is that when I'm, kind of stuck or ruminating on ideas, sometimes it's those strangest places that I will get a spark of inspiration. So here's what happened. I started watching, and I don't know, I think it's like season 9 or something. I'm not sure. But this is what got my attention. So if you're familiar with Dragon's Den, you know that it's a series of entrepreneurs that are pitching their business ideas to venture capitalists that are looking for investments in their business to grow their business. What really struck me was there was a gentleman that presented a business that was really actually a very good business. I was impressed with the tech that they had put behind it. I thought there was definitely an opening in the marketplace for what he's thinking about. And I thought, wow, the dragons are going to be super excited to invest in this. He presented his product and his business quite well. And he did, in fact, have 2 very good offers on the table. And he stepped away for a moment. He wanted to speak with his business partner or vice president, whoever it was. And they had a conversation where he was thinking that potentially he might want to sweeten the deal with one of the dragons. So he walks back in, and this is what's so interesting. There are 5 dragons on the show at this point. 2 of them had partnered up and were putting together a deal. The 2 of them are offering a deal, and one of them had offered her own deal, which was a little bit different than the original one. He walked in, this entrepreneur walked back in and looked at I believe it's Arlene Dickinson, and please don't hang me for not having her name correct, but looked at her and said, I want to talk about the deal that you offered, and I like your offer, but I want to adjust it. Now, here's where it all went wrong. At that point, everything was okay. He had been clear about what he wanted. He had been very respectful in his presentation and when he talked with the dragons. And then it hit the rails. The way he presented the offer that he wanted to have from Arlene was so incredibly disrespectful to her and completely devalued what she brought to the table. So it's no surprise then that, she actually withdrew her deal and she said, I see that you obviously don't have any respect for what I have to offer. And so for that reason, I'm out. Now, here's what I don't think that this person ever saw coming. There are 5 people on that panel, and 2 other venture capitalists had a deal on offer for him. And so when Arlene pulled her deal, he turned to the other 2 and said, "Okay, great. Well, I'm ready to go ahead with your deal." And they said, "You know what? Actually, the way that you treated her, we're not happy with it, and for that reason, I'm out." And the second partner also said, "Yeah, I'm not impressed with how this worked out. I do think that there's a phenomenal business model here. I think there could be some great success, but I'm not impressed with how you treated my associate, and for that reason, I'm out." And so what ended up happening, this entrepreneur had 2 phenomenal deals on offer. But he forgot something that is so key in building your business, and that is the power of a relationship. It is undersold how powerful the relationships that you build in your business are. Okay, I want you to really make sure that you catch that. Relationships are the cornerstone of any business. Now, even though the deal, like I said, those 2 venture capitalists, the 2 dragons that were on the show, they had their own deal. They had presented their own deal. And if the entrepreneur had taken that deal, that wouldn't have bothered any of the other dragons. That's just how business is. They wouldn't have taken it personally. They know that's business, right? For business, not personal. However, because he began by completely devaluing one of the other members that were sitting up there in those chairs, he lost everybody. And what's worse is that he not only lost them, but he completely devalued and discredited who he was. Because my guess is that if he's now tried to get funding from other people, he's not thinking about the relationship that all 5 of these dragons have with others. Plus, I mean, obviously the show is televised, so all of this happens on TV. And so other VCs might be seeing this and they're going, "Oh, we don't want to work with that guy." So what was phenomenal to me was just the fact that, first of all, he had this amazing business idea. I'll be honest, guys, like this is something I was like, wow, this guy's going to make millions. I could definitely see that this would be a really powerful business. Then he had 2 really phenomenal business opportunities, business deals on the table, and he literally could have taken either one and walked away and done amazingly. His business could have just skyrocketed with either deal. And what ended up happening because of his own conceit and forgetting about the power and the weight that relationships have in business, he walked away with nothing. All the deals were rescinded. So I want to talk today, I want to kick off our first year of business 3-part series with a focus on relationships because like I said, it's so key. And it wasn't on my mind first thing for this series because it just wasn't. I had some other things that we're going to talk about in part 2 and part 3. And so I love just how this all came around. Here I am Netflixing and boom, I have the idea for my first part. So let's talk about building relationships. When you're starting a new business, there's a number of different relationships that you need to consider. Obviously, there's ones with your clients. We're going to talk about that. Something that you may or may not have considered yet is building relationships with vendors. So if you need to buy supplies, then it's important that you have a good, healthy relationship with vendors. And then, of course, there's also the relationship with your network. So these are people who are neither your clients nor are your vendors, but perhaps they are other trades. For example, in interior design, I want to build relationships with other trades like electricians and plumbers and craftspeople to be able to help me put together these projects. Maybe it's just simply other people that are not even necessarily related to your industry, but could become great referral partners for you, right? So relationships are key. And if you build relationships naturally, then a lot of what we're going to talk about today is going to be very common sense. But if you have a bit of a challenge with building new relationships, I want you to really pay attention. So first of all, I want you to think about this. When you're building on any relationship, is to be open and specific. When you're starting a business, be open to making connections and be specific about what you're looking for. So when I started my design business all those years ago, I think I knew like 30 people. I think I did a count one time. I knew about 30 people in the city at the time. I was fairly new to the city and I'm like, well, I don't know, but I know I offer a great service. I know I can do this better than what I've seen on offer before. And so I'm just going to go ahead and do it. But what I had to remember was that I needed to be open to making connections. Now, here's where I had to do some personal growth. My hand is up here. I have extremely high expectations of other people. I know that that sometimes can be exhausting, definitely for my loved ones, but it can be a bit of a challenge for me as well because I have such high expectations of others that I don't necessarily meet those people, right? There's no guarantee that I'm going to meet someone else who operates at the high level that I expect. So one of the things that I had to learn right away was to be open to the idea that just because this person may not speak as intelligently or eloquently as I expect, or, they really fumbled through their first meeting or something, that I can't just look at them and dismiss them because it's entirely possible that they're very good at what they do, but maybe they're not so good at building relationships, right? So those are things that I had to learn to be open about. Now, when I say be specific, I want you to be specific about what it is you're looking for in the relationship. So early on, again, because I was building my network and trying to build connections and get to know other people and obviously bring in more clients, I took a lot of meetings that, afterwards I'd leave and I'm like, well, we had a great conversation, but what did I actually get out of that meeting? What did either of us actually get out of that meeting other than, a great conversation, a good cup of coffee, and 2 hours of time spent in the afternoon? So it's important that you're specific about what you're looking for. Now, what you may notice, if you're brand new at this might be you. So don't punch me, don't send me any hate mail, but just understand that this might be you. And if you've been at it for a while, then you've probably experienced this before, where you meet somebody who's so excited to build their business, to get out there, to help, to serve, to do things, that they suggest a meeting with you, but there's no idea of what's going to happen behind that meeting, other than I just want to get to know you better. And so what I've learned over time is that I just want to get to know you better is not a good enough reason to take a meeting. So when I say to be specific, I want you to think about what is it that you're looking for? And I believe that all meetings should be two-sided streets. It should never be that, someone invites you to a meeting only to pitch you their business, but they're not at all interested in what you do or in any way being able to help you out. Now, that is not to say that you can't take meetings where someone has a business that you are interested in or a service that you are looking for. But if that person were to sit down and completely just devalue what you do and not ask about anything that you do or offer in any way to support your business, that will probably leave you with a pretty salty feeling in your mouth. So think about when you're taking those meetings, is there a mutual benefit here? So by the same token, if you're inviting somebody out for a meeting for a coffee or what have you, what is it that you are wanting from them and what is it that you can offer them? And now, to be honest, I struggled with the idea of, what can I offer somebody? Because again, my business was brand new. I didn't have a huge network. I was growing my network. And I thought, what can I possibly offer this person? And so I had to learn how to ask that, what is it that I could do to support you? And the beautiful thing is, now I'm guessing it may depend on where you live. I don't know for sure. Where I live in Calgary, there's a deep entrepreneurial spirit within the city. And most of the people that I met with were entrepreneurs. And so the beauty of that was that they wanted to serve. Sometimes they simply wanted to meet with me to be able to just offer some insight or value and just be able to make the path easier for the next one coming up. So that is possible, but it's important for you to recognize ahead of time if that's the scenario. If you're meeting with somebody because you want to ask them about their business or learn about, how they do things or how they grew things, then be extremely respectful of their time. Maybe keep that meeting to an hour only. My suggestion, if that's the case, buy their coffee. And sometimes you may have to arm wrestle for it. And if they're going to insist on buying it for you, that's fine. But be respectful of this person that is giving up their time. Time is the one asset that we can never get back. I talked about time being an important asset a few episodes ago, and I'll link it in the show notes. But I do want you to really think about that time is a very valuable asset. And so if there's nothing that you can offer them in return, and you're literally spending some time with them to learn, like I like to say, at the feet of the masters, then be very respectful of their time. Okay, so being open and specific, I have a great example to share with you. Like I said, when I started my business, I was growing my network in a variety of ways, and one of them was looking for qualified tradespeople to assist me with my projects. So I was at a networking event, this is maybe 18 months into my business, I'm not quite sure, where I met a electrician that had just moved to this country from somewhere else. I don't remember where he came from. And he was very eager to work together. And so I did my best at the event to kind of, figure out how much electrical work he'd done and what his experience was, etc. And he was very excited to get together and have a meeting with myself and then someone else that he knew. And I think this other person was maybe a contractor or something. I don't remember. But anyway, he was really excited and he thought the three of us could do some great work together. So, okay, I met with the electrician once and, got some good information, I thought, and was, open to the idea of potentially working together. But here's what was interesting to me. When the three of us met, when this third person came into the meeting and we talked more about what each of us could bring to the table, that's when it actually came out that this electrician was not certified. He was not all the way certified the way that I would expect my tradespeople to be certified. And so while I appreciated his enthusiasm, that was a huge red flag for me because I said, look, I can't be bringing somebody into my clients' homes where they're trusting me to bring them valued tradespeople, and I'm bringing someone who isn't properly certified to do the work that we do here in Canada. And so that was a difficult conversation to have with this person and say, look, it's not anything personal, has nothing to do with you personally, but for my business, I need to protect my clients. So when I say be specific, be very specific about the things you're looking for. Remember, you are building your business on these relationships. So if you are, like this was a case where it was a tradesperson where potentially I have them working with or working for my clients, but maybe it's a vendor that at some point your clients may have to interact with, or it's a referral network where someone potentially is referring you clients. You want to be specific about what you're looking for. And remember that who you align with can be a powerful factor in where your business grows. Second, I want to talk about testing the waters before committing. Now, this is fantastic for if you need suppliers or vendors for, say, products or materials, that kinds of things. So what I mean by that is to give yourself time to check out a few different options. Again, stay open and be specific about what you're looking for, and then build deeper relationships with those who want to align with you. Now, when I was starting my business, obviously there was a number of suppliers that I needed for my interior design business. And so I was looking at tile companies and flooring and you name it, paint, etc. And I had the opportunity I was looking for someone who does soft lines. So soft lines meaning like drapery, valances for your windows, those kinds of things, custom bedding, etc. And so I had gone to an industry event where there was a few vendors that were present. And so I thought, okay, cool, I'll go check them out another day. Now, here's a little trick that I like to do because I'm always intrigued about how people treat you based on the way that you're dressed. So I actually made a practice when I was looking for suppliers and vendors that I would go in super casual clothes. Like I'm talking flip-flops, leggings, a t-shirt, and a hoodie. If I went in like I would go when I meet with my clients where I'm, in a dress and heels or cute shoes or whatever, I'm dressed much more professionally, you get treated differently. Right or wrong, doesn't matter. But what I wanted to pay attention to was how I was treated when I was not dressed like someone that needed to be acknowledged. Here's the reason why, because you might be going, Amy, it's not very professional to go out when you're dressed like you would go to the gym. Here's why I wanted to do it. There are occasions where I would need to send my clients to different suppliers. Very rarely did that happen, but on occasion that did happen. And I wanted to make sure that I had done my homework, that should I need to send a client somewhere, that they would be treated with the same respect and value than if I was the one who walked in the door. So I was looking for some softline suppliers, and the first one that I went to was fantastic. The people were really open and they answered my questions. There was no pressure being in the sales room, and it was fantastic. They operated to the trade only, but they weren't snobby about it. So fantastic. The second one was a supplier that had been recommended to me by a few different designers that also use them. And I walked in again in my, my flip-flops, my hoodie, my leggings, and was immediately greeted with quite a bit of attitude, which happens in interior design, which is, like I said, one of the big reasons why I wanted to test vendors ahead of time. So what was interesting to me is that the first meeting I was in there, and I literally just went in to go look around, see what they have on offer, maybe ask a few questions. They spoke down to me so much in that 5 minutes, and actually had a moment where, I asked if I need to send a client in, would that be okay? And got a very snobby, you should be making all the selections for your clients. We are a to the trade only option, and so your clients should not be in here unless they are supervised by you. Now, what got me was not only the attitude that was loaded in those statements, but also the fact that they felt it was their right to tell me how to run my business. Now, this is maybe my father coming through, who is just as stubborn as every Dutchman has ever been. But it put my back up, and I'm like, wow, you don't know who I am. You don't know if I have, $50,000 or $100,000 worth of business that I could be bringing you every year. But you've judged me on what I'm wearing, and you've spoken down to me as if I don't know what I'm about. And that is not a business that I'm interested in doing business with. So needless to say, I've never done business with that particular vendor. Now, here's where relationships are key. I did not go after the person. I did not get all up in myself and, talk down to this person and put her in her place. But I also was very clear that I likely would not do business with this particular company because I did not appreciate how they treated me. Now, the interesting thing is I've been there for industry events and subsequent occasions. And of course, when I go to an industry event, then I'm dressed professionally, right? I'm mixing with other professionals, and it's a totally different situation. But and in those cases, I'm treated fine. But it was so interesting to me to see how I was treated purely based on the way that I was dressed. So this is what I say when testing the waters. If I had not tested the waters with a few different suppliers and I had just gone with the first one, then it's possible that I might have gone to this vendor first, right? Because it was the one that was recommended to me. So it's possible that I would have gone to this vendor first and would never have known about the other supplier who I have worked with ever since I began, and they have been fantastic. And I adore them. I think they're phenomenal. I have no issue sending clients there if they need to. My clients are aware that they don't sell to clients directly. They sell to the trade, but they are open for clients going in if needed. So I want you to think about, testing the waters of, and this is very specific for vendors, but it can be used in all things. I would think, again, when you're talking about potential referral partners, if you're building a business where you want to, maybe you're doing something like a BNI or something, test the waters ahead of time and make sure that it's the kind of person that you would want to do business with. Because if it's not, and you take clients from those people, they refer you clients, what they're going to do is it's the whole birds of a feather flock together kind of thing. So if you don't get along with that person, you don't like them, even if they send you referrals, likely they're going to be referrals of people that you don't necessarily want to serve. right? Or there's always going to be that potential friction between you and this other person. So be okay with testing the waters ahead of time and don't shut anything down. Just because you may not work well with somebody does not mean that you should just cut off that relationship altogether. You never know if at some point down the road, that same person is going to become a key factor in building your business. So when I say relationships is the cornerstone, I mean relationships is the cornerstone. It is what can make or break your business. So pay very close attention to how you interact with people. And finally, this one is more specific to your clients. Beware the overshare. Now, here's what I mean. Your clients are coming to you to solve their problems. They are not interested in your problems. Okay? I know I've seen Brené Brown talks about it, and I've seen it in different places where people talk about the idea of being vulnerable. Now, there is a time and a place for being vulnerable. So while there are, I don't think that you can ever have courage without being vulnerable at first, because that's what courage you're vulnerable and you need the courage to overcome that vulnerability. However, when you are building relationships with people, do not use vulnerability, I'm going to use air quotes here, vulnerability as a way to build a false relationship. Here's an example. Let's say you've gone through some really tough personal stuff in the last little while, and you're really struggling, but you're doing your best, you're coming out of it okay, and you're just trying to keep your head up and your nose up and keep going forward. And you meet somebody new who you really would love to work with or partner with or what have you. And you begin by telling them all this like deep heavy stuff that you've been going through in I know this sounds terrible, but it's in it some kind of like a twisted hope that this person is going to want to, I don't know, help you, be friends with you, what have you. I'm not sure, but there's a time and a place for sharing intimate personal details. Now, I will say this. I very much believe in being personable and being friendly. And in fact, that's how the best relationships are built. And when I meet with my clients, I do my best to be open and approachable. And I don't mind sharing stories and anecdotes of things that have happened in my life or what have you, but I would never go into an overshare. So, for example, if I'm working with somebody about let's say I'm talking with a coaching client about building their business, and they're talking about how something they're really struggling with something. I could say something along the lines of, you know what, I've actually had a very similar situation. Here's what happened to me, and this is how I overcame it. Now, here's what happened to me does not go into this poor me pity party victim state. It's I look at it as simply stating the facts. So, for example, I've talked about before that I had to stand in front of a judge in my first 18 months of business trying to get paid. And the situation sucked, right? There's nothing about that situation that I thought was fun. I hated the whole thing. And even now, looking back, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe that I went through that. But when I talk about that situation, I'm not like, oh, it was just so hard, and it just took so much of a toll out of me, and oh my God, and like I was crying every day, and I can't believe that this guy would be such a jerk, and why would he treat me this way, and blah 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 blah. When I share that story, I share it for two reasons. One, to say, look, it's not always going to go your way, and two, I learned a lot of shit out of that. So, one of the key things, I've talked about this many times before, one of my most powerful profit producing strategies that I have in my design business came directly out of that situation. And so I share the story to say, look, yeah, things can get tough. And yeah, this might really suck right now, but what is the potential good that comes out of this? And even if there's no good necessarily that you can see right at this moment, it might take some time for you to get the perspective and see it. But what could you have done differently to not have found yourself in this situation? And so when I share a story, I want to be specific about it. I want to be cautious that I'm sharing enough so they understand that I've kind of been through it. So I understand what they're talking about, but also share, look, here's what I learned out of that. Now, this one is key. I want you to be very careful about this one when I'm talking about the overshare. This is very specific to your clients. Do not ever speak poorly about other clients to your clients. It is incredibly bad form to do this. Don't do it. I talk about this in depth in episode 23, and I'll link it up in the show notes, so be sure you have a listen. But I want you to think always about being professional, right? Raise the bar. And if you're someone who likes to gossip or, feels the need to share the latest whatever slander, now, first of all, you're probably not listening to my podcast because my guess is that we don't jive because I don't hang out with people like that because it drives me crazy, right? They talk about how small minds talk about other people. And so those kinds of people aren't my jam. I've had, experience with them over my life, and it's interesting being from a small town because that tends to happen a lot in small towns, which is maybe one of the reasons why I left. But it's you got to be professional in all things. When you are representing your business, you have to remember you are representing your business. Okay? So leave the personal out of it. It's so important that you remember in all your communications and in everything that you're doing that you are building a business, and it doesn't take much, especially when you're building in like your first year. It does not take much to sideline things. Right? Look at the guy that I spoke about at the beginning with the Dragon's Den, where he had two powerful deals on the table, and he screwed it up because of his own, I don't know, conceit or naivete, I don't know, but he forgot about the power of relationships. So I don't want you to forget that. It's so key as you're building your business. So beware the overshare. And again, it's totally okay to be personable, and it's okay to share funny stories and things, but think about it specifically for your clients. Think about it on the other end. So let's say, for example, you were a massage therapist and you just finished a massage with someone who was just like, I don't know, all kinds of hairy or hadn't showered yet that day or what have you. And you're speaking to your next client about, oh my gosh, you would not believe the person that the last client that was just in here, like they were just gross and blah, 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 and I feel all icky about it. First of all, now, what I would be thinking is, okay, first of all, I hope you've washed your hands between that person and me. But second of all, and this one's really big, what I am going to be worried about is what you're saying about me to everybody else, right? That is not what you want. That's not the experience you want your clients to leave with. You don't want them, if you're a masseuse and you're about to, and I don't care how long you've known this person, it's always about your business. So I have clients who have become very dear friends over the years, and we've shared lots of personal moments. But let me tell you, when I'm there doing design work, I am there doing design work. And even though they may hear a little, personal blip about something, maybe they knew I've been having a challenge with something and they asked me how it's going. I might say, you know what, this has been really tough, but let's talk about it another time. And they understand that the reason that I want to talk about it another time is because I'm there to do business. I'm there in a professional capacity, and they respect that. So I do want you to be very conscious of that. The beauty of building your business is that you do build these beautiful relationships, that you can potentially build some really deep and meaningful relationships. I know one of my vendors, the rep that I have for my vendor, she and I have become very dear friends. But when we are in a business situation, I also need to remember, and she does a phenomenal job as well, that we are there in a professional capacity. So now is not the time for bringing up personal issues. All right. So definitely beware the overshare. And remember, they're not your BFF. All right. Your clients are the lifeblood of your business. So I want you to really consider that. All right. So we've talked about the focus on building relationships in your first year of business. And I trust that you got some phenomenal information out of today's episode. And I'm going to wrap it up with just a couple of quick points here. So first of all, remember to be diplomatic. Even if somebody is just the most, I don't know, misogynist, chauvinist, gross, sexist pig you've ever met, hold your head high and be diplomatic. You don't ever need to work with this person. You don't need to build any relationship with this person necessarily, but you do need to remember that you don't know who this person knows, and you don't want to shoot somebody in the foot and potentially hurt your chances down the road. Now, that's not to say that you need to manipulate things at all, but just be diplomatic about it. Think about it like you're talking to the president. However you feel about the president, you're probably not going to be a total dickwad when you talk to him, right? Second of all, remember that this is your business. Don't make it personal. Now, this applies on so many levels beyond just the idea of building your relationships, but definitely when it comes to building relationships, remember that your focus is business. So then when I say don't make it personal, don't take it personally if somebody's being a total dickwad, things like that situation where I went to the supplier and they totally talked down to me. There's a moment where, yeah, it rubbed the wrong way, but if I ultimately took that personally, then that's not good for my business either, right? I just looked at it as a situation of like, okay, so maybe they haven't quite figured out what they're doing yet, but I know that that's not somebody that I want to work with, and that's okay. But I have not destroyed the potential for that relationship. I would never say their name. I would not go into them and be like, you guys are the worst people I've ever met. That's not what it's about. It's business. It's not personal. Oy. Remember, respect the other person, even if there's being a falling out, and act respectfully. Now, I want to share a quick little story. So as I mentioned, one of my vendors, the rep at one of my vendors, she and I become really good friends. The interesting thing about it is that sometimes I get to hear some kind of intriguing stories about things. So about 2 years back, I had introduced a contractor to her because I think she's phenomenal. I think the product that they supply is really good. And this contractor and I were just getting started. And so I said, you know what, I think you should meet so-and-so at this place. I think she could be a really good contact for you. I found out just about, 3 or 4 months ago, this contractor and I no longer work together for a variety of reasons, and none of them are important. But what was interesting to me is that my friend was telling me he had actually partnered with another contractor, and they were now going to be going together. And so they had, spoken with my friend, and they had sorted everything out. And then somewhere in the first 6 months or so, things fell out. There was a falling out, things went sideways. I don't know. I don't care. It's not my business. And she didn't know either. But here's what was interesting is that she heard from both of them earfuls about all the things that went wrong and how terrible the other person was. Now, do you think that she cares about why their partnership fell apart? Do you think it's important to her in how she does business, how they feel about the other? No, it's not important. She's there in a professional capacity. She's there to say, okay, let's work together. How can we make your business good? How can my business support your business, etc. Right? She's not there to be your counselor, your guide, and be like, oh, you know what? You're totally right. That guy was a total jerk. And she said to me, it was such a weird place to be in, Amy, because I don't know either of these guys super well. And what am I supposed to do? They've both remained clients of mine. Right? So I want you to think about it when I say respect the other person, to act respectfully, even if the shit hits the fan, even if, so this clown that I ended up having to go in front of a judge to get paid for, I have zero respect for this person at all, because I don't understand how somebody can do what he did. But that said, if I ever met him in person, if by some random chance we happened to be at the same event or something, I would not say to him, you're a total douchebag and I'm out of here. I would probably say something along the lines of, it's great to see you again, and have a great evening. Always act respectfully. It is so important. It will, even in the face of everything falling apart, that is what will end up being a lasting impression. Because let me tell you, as satisfying as it might be in the moment to take that person down several notches and say, let me just tell you, sister, all the crap that you have brought into my life. It might feel really good, but what you're doing is you're devaluing yourself in the eyes of others. And whether or not that's right or wrong is not the point here. The point here is that you're in business and your business survives on the relationships you build. So you don't want to take a relationship out, the potential of a relationship out, because somebody saw you somewhere or overheard something that you said somewhere that didn't leave you sitting in the best light, right? So be respectful of the other person, even let me say, especially if they're a douchebag. Be extra respectful of them, and don't feel like you need to talk to them, but be respectful when you move away. And finally, I want you to remember that your clients are your business's lifeblood. So relationships are the cornerstone of your business, and your clients are your business's lifeblood. Value them highly and treat them accordingly. And so when I said earlier, beware the overshare, beware what you're talking about with your clients. Yes, build relationships with them. Yes, be personable and friendly and open with them, but do not start sharing stuff that they don't need to know. Right? They don't need to know that you have a UTI or that you've got blisters on your feet because, I don't know, you were doing something weird on the weekend. Be open with your life to a degree, but beware that you're oversharing it. And just remember, your clients are your business's lifeblood. All right, team, that wraps up part 1 of your first year in business, the 3-part series. So this one, in case you missed it, was all about building relationships, and I trust that you got some incredible value out of it. Now, I do want to encourage you, definitely tune into the next few episodes. Next week, we're going to be talking about how to book your first clients. I'm pretty excited about it. And I would encourage you as well to, like I said, you can check out that other episode 23, if you want to hear a bit more about the adverse effects of talking negatively about your clients. But what I would suggest is that if you are looking for some first year in business, a little mini training, I have a free little mini training called the Launchpad, and you can sign up for that by going to daretobegin.net/the Launchpad, all one word. And you can sign up, you'll get yourself into that mini training. And I'm going to share with you on next week's episode a bonus that I just put into that free mini training, which I'm super excited for you. So it will make a whole lot more sense next week. So I'm not going to tell you about it until next week. All right, with that, I wish you a fantastic day. Thank you so much for listening. I would love to hear from you. I am on the gram. Do my best to be on there fairly regularly, though I usually take my weekends off. You can find me there at I Dare to Begin. And please drop me a DM and let me know what you think about the podcast, or if you have any questions or things that you'd love for me to cover in a future episode, I can do that as well. And as always, definitely, if you feel so inclined, please leave me a review on iTunes. That would be fantastic as well. In the meantime, I wish you a phenomenal day, and I'm super looking forward to talking with you again next week. Bye for now. Are you tired of figuring it out all on your own? Of sitting in overwhelm, knowing that you're not moving forward, but having no idea where or how to start? Are you ready to learn effective, profit-supporting strategies for your business so that you can finally earn the money you desire and step into the freedom that you're working so hard to create? If so, I invite you to join me inside the Launchpad. You'll get instant access to free training designed to meet you where you are right now and propel you forward toward the dream that you hold in your mind. It's time to make a powerful move toward your future. Time to step up and serve the people who desperately need your help. Let's not keep them waiting any longer. Today is the day. Join the Launchpad now. Just go to daretobegin.net/the Launchpad and sign up. Your success is inevitable. Now, let's launch it.